in this lecture, what we are going to do, we are going to stay on with the social shaping of technology vis-a-vis in relation to the technological shaping of society. I mean, when we discuss social shaping of technology, we are discussing social shaping of technology in contradistinction with technological shaping of society. In this context, we have discussed many things: political control of technological systems, technology as knowledge, social construction of technological systems, actor network theory, and from here onward, we are going to discuss how technology is also shaped by gender. In this context, we are going to discuss the relationship between feminism and technology, or how do feminists bring about a critique to technology. Okay? Technology is, I mean, when I say feminists critique to technology, I mean technology as a socio-technical arrangement, okay, of certain political order, social order, military order, ethical order, legal order, and so on. Okay? In this context, Cynthia Cockburn, I mean, in her article Caught in the Wheels, which represents a pivotal point in the growing engagement between feminism and technology. Cockburn went beyond concerns for equal opportunities. I mean, when I say equal opportunities, I mean when Cockburn mentioned equal opportunities, it is not simply equal opportunities between two genders, but which goes beyond equal opportunities. I mean greater representation of women in the traditionally male professions of science and engineering, to ask two further questions. Number one is that, is technology itself shaped by gender? Number two, or is gender shaped by technology? When Cockburn posed this question, is technology itself shaped by gender? Okay? I mean, whether or is gender shaped by technology? Okay? What is the cause and what is the effect? What is the antecedent and what is the consequent? What is the explicandum and what is the explicand? I mean, what is the cause and what is the effect? Whether gender is the cause and technology is the effect, or technology is the cause and gender is the effect. Let us see. When Cockburn posed this question, first question, is technology itself shaped by gender? Cockburn's answer to the first question, that is technology shaped by is technology itself shaped by gender? Okay, the answer to that question is that industrial, commercial, military technologies are masculine in a very historical and material sense. In part, this gendering role, okay, arises because artifacts and forms of knowledge associated with women are often simply not regarded as technology. Okay? Even Ruth Cohen, Ruth Squarch Cohen, for example, noted in 1979 the exclusion of women from traditional history of technology. Okay? Let me quote Cohen here. She mentions that the indices to the standard histories of technology do not contain a single reference, for example, to such a significant cultural artifact as the baby bottle. Here is a simple implement which has transformed a fundamental human experience for vast numbers of infants and mothers, and been one of the more controversial exports of Western technology to underdeveloped countries, yet it finds no place in our histories of technology. Cohen wrote in 1979. Okay? We will come to the second point a little while later. I mean, one must explore the gendering of technology in several other ways. Here, what is more immediately relevant and is arguably Cockburn's distinctive contribution to the debate around gender and technology. Okay? Is her answer to the second question, that is gender shaped by technology? Technology, Cockburn argues, is one of the formative processes of men, not women, okay? Historically, materially. Okay? The appropriation of technology by men and the exclusion of women from many of the domains deemed technical are processes that leave their mark in the very design of tasks and of machines. They are also part of the processes by which in our society gender is constituted. Okay? Different childhood socialization, different role models, different forms of schooling. Okay? Childhood socialization, different role models, different forms of schooling, gender segregation and occupations, different domestic responsibilities, and sometimes plain historical processes of expulsion, okay, as after the First and Second World Wars, have all contributed to what Cockburn describes as the construction of men as strong, manually able and technologically endowed, and women as physically and technically incompetent. Okay? This is how gendering of technology has been done historically and materially. Okay? If gender and technology are mutually constitutive, okay, if a feminist construal of technology, okay, if technology and gender, okay, are mutually constitutive, so are ethnicity and technology. Though this is a topic that has been much less thoroughly explored in recent literature, how a particular ethnic group conceives of technology, perceives technology. The mutual constitution is most evident in relation to that commonplace marker of ethnicity. Technology has been shaped by ethnicity in the sense that conventional valuations of skin colors have been the benchmark in the development of photographic and film technologies. Okay? You can look at many Hollywood movies where you will find, if a film has been based on US or UK, okay, you will find the names of villains, okay, they are mostly from the erstwhile Soviet Union. Okay, this is how film industry, photographic industries, film technologies, they have exhibited the spirit of racism. In this sense, number one, the relationship between ethnicity and technology can be established on 2 points. Okay. First, technology has been shaped by ethnicity in that conventional valuations of skin colors have been the benchmark in the development of photographic and film technologies. These typically are fine-tuned so that they provide pleasing renditions of white faces, sometimes to the detriment of the reproduction of other skin colorations. That is why you will find in Hollywood as well as in some Bollywood movies that especially the villains are of black color. Okay? The skin color determines who is going to be the villain so far as the relationship is between ethnicity and technology or racism and technology is concerned. Okay. This is extremely important precisely because the way we look at childhood socialization, the background, different role models, different forms of schooling, segregation of occupations, different responsibilities, they are historically conditioned. Okay? They must be examined in a more historical and material sense. In this sense, I mean that is why what we first point is first point has to be examined in detail, that how technology has been shaped by ethnicity, in that conventional valuations of skin colors have been the benchmark in the development of photographic and film technologies. Okay. These typically are fine tuned so that they provide pleasing renditions of white faces, sometimes to the detriment of the reproduction of other skin color issues. And secondly, technology has helped constitute ethnicity in that conventional hierarchies of desirability have been reinforced by the reproduction of white faces as pleasing flesh tones rather than as unpleasantly beefy. Okay? I mean, if we can look at this, I mean the way technology has helped constitute ethnicity in that conventional hierarchies of desirability have been reinforced by the reproduction of white faces as pleasing flesh tones rather than as often happened with untuned photographic technologies as unpleasantly beefy. Okay. From here onward, what we are going to do, we are going to look at in specific terms, okay, other ways to look at the social shaping of technology. Okay. We are in this section, we are trying to provide as many examples as possible, okay, to establish how technology is socially, economically, politically, culturally, ethically, legally, institutionally, ideologically shaped. Okay. Technology is not an autonomous activity, it is not independent. Okay. It does not develop on its own, rather it the development, the emergence and development of a particular technology is very much contingent upon the way our economy, culture and polity are designed. Okay. That is why if you recall the initial lectures that we discussed, that technology is not neutral, the neutrality of a particular technology depends on the way it is designed and controlled. Okay. Let us see how Donna Haraway, she is an eminent STS scholar. The way we are going to discuss the way she has unfurled the different dimensions within the purview of social shaping of technology. I mean, if you look at all language, including mathematics, is figurative, that is made of tropes constituted by bumps that make us swerve from literal mindedness. What do we mean by tropes? I mean non-literal uses of language such as metaphor. Haraway attempts to emphasize figuration to make explicit and inescapable the topic quality, tropic quality of all material semiotic processes, especially in technoscience. Okay? What is that semiotic process then? When I say technoscience, I mean we are trying to go beyond the distinction between science and technology. We are trying to look at technology and science on common parlance. I mean, we are not trying to make a distinction between science and technology, because what is technology becomes science tomorrow. What is technology today will become science tomorrow, and what is science today may become technology tomorrow. I mean, this is the dialectical relationship between science and technology. That is why we are using technoscience. What is that semiotic process? A semiotic process is loosely one in which meaning is created. Whywhy used the term technoscience in preference to science and technology because she feels the two have become inseparable. We cannot make a distinction between science and technology. For example, think of a small set of objects into which lives and worlds are built: chip, maybe chip, gene, seed, fetus, database, bomb, race, brain, ecosystem, and many other things. Okay? This kind of list is made up of imploded atoms or dense nodes that explode into entire worlds of practice. The chip, seed or gene is simultaneously literal as well as figurative. We inhabit and are inhabited by such figures that map universes of knowledge, practice and power. The globalization of the world of planet Earth is a semiotic material production of some forms of life rather than others. Okay? Technoscience is the story of such globalized world, such process of globalization. It is the travelogue of distributed, heterogeneous, linked socio-technical calculations that craft the world as a net called the global. Okay? Herein lies the significance of a concept called cyborg or a cybernetic organism. Okay? When we look at before getting into information society, I mean, what are the issues involved in information society? What are the illusions that information society brings in today? Before getting into this, it is important to look at cyborg, a cybernetic organism propounded by Donna Haraway. I mean, cyborg refers to a fusion of the organic and the technical. Life forms that inhabit the recently congealed planet Earth, the whole earth of eco-activists and green commodity catalogs gestated in a historically specific techno-scientific bomb. Okay? We can give numerous examples. I mean, for example, okay, I mean, we will come to this point how the cyborg is figure both material and fantastic, both real and imaginary, that explore the implications for life in the context of technoscience. Okay? Let us have some examples. The apparatuses of the 20th century military conflicts, embedded in repeated world wars, decades of Cold War, nuclear weapons, even today, and their institutional matrix in strategic planning, endless scenario production, and simulations in think tanks such as RAND, the immune system like networking strategies for post-colonial global control inscribed in low intensity conflict doctrines, and post-Cold War, simultaneous multiple war fighting strategies depending on rapid massive deployment, concentrated control of information and communications, and high intensity subnuclear precision weapons. The apparatuses of hyper capitalist market traffic, I mean, in today's terminology, it is a capitalist market that we see in the international arena. Okay? The apparatuses of hyper capitalist market traffic and flexible accumulation strategies, all relying on stunning speeds and powers of manipulation of scale, especially miniaturization, which characterize the paradigmatic high technology transnational corporations. Okay? The apparatuses of production in that techno-scientific planetary habitat space called the ecosystem, with its constitutive birth pangs in resource management practices in such institutions as national fisheries in the 1920s and 1930s, in post Second World War theoretical fascination with all things cybernetic in the Atomic Energy Commission, AEC mediated research projects in the 1950s in the US for tracing radioisotopes through food chains in the Pacific Ocean. In the 1970s, global modeling practices indebted to the Club of Rome and to scientific and to international projects such as the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organizations, I mean UNESCO's Man and the Biosphere program, and in the early salvos of widespread green war as a dominant new world order security concern with its diplomatic forms played out in 1992 at the Earth Summit in Rio de Janeiro. Okay. I mean, if we look at the development of capitalism and subsequently capitalism that has given rise to certain types of technology. Capitalism has not given rise to handloom technology. For example, capitalism has given rise to rather power loom technology, even more sophisticated technologies to produce cotton, okay, or silk, I mean cloth, okay. And then we see the responses, the critical responses to such largely state funded, state sponsored capitalist technologies. Okay. The apparatuses of production of globalized extraterrestrial everyday consciousness in the planetary pandemic of multi-site, multimedia, multi-species, multicultural, cyborgian entertainment events such as many Star Trek and so on, and they are proliferating sequel in the daily information stream embedded in transnational US dominated broad spectrum media conglomerates such as those forced by the mergers of Time Warner with CNN and the Disney universe with Capital Cities, owner of CBS and so on. Okay. The offspring of these technoscientific wombs are cyborgs, imploded germinal entities, densely packed condensations of worlds socked into being from the force of the implosion of the natural and the artificial, nature and culture, subject and object, machine and organic body, money and lives, narratives and reality and so on. That is why the cyborg is figure both material and fantastic, both real and imaginary, that explore the implications for life in the context of technoscience. So what kinds of kin are called in the proprietary forms of life in these days near the in these days, I mean in 2017, in the 21st century. Okay. How do we who innovate such stories make psychic and commercial investments in forms of life where the lines among human, machine and organic nature are highly permeable and eminently revisable? How useful is my abiding suspicion that biology, the historically specific congealed embodiments in the world as well as the techno-scientific discourse positing such bodies is an accumulation strategy. The point is less disreputable if had Whywhy written that by technology both the discourse and the body constituted as a biotechnics is an accumulation strategy, but much of what is accumulated is more strange than capital, more kind than alien, more alluring than gold. The potential of science and technology for liberation, the liberatory potential of science and technology. I mean, when we look at, it is the great power of science and technology to create new meanings and new entities to make new worlds. Okay? In what gets politely called modernity, I mean, when we create new meanings, new entities, new worlds, we tend to arrive at we tend to look at a modernist construal of meanings, modernist construal of entities, modernist construal of these worlds. In what gets politely called modernity and its afterlife or half-life, accelerated production of natural knowledge pervasively structures commerce, industry, healing, community, war, sex, literacy, entertainment and worship. The world building alliances of humans and non-humans in technoscience shape subjects and objects, subjectivity and objectivity, action and passion, inside and outside in ways that enfeeble other modes of speaking about science and technology. In short, in brief, in a nutshell, technoscience is about worldly materialized signifying and significant power. And many things can come. I mean, the cyborg, the way Whywhy tried to look at cyborg, I mean, the cyborg is a cybernetic organism, a fusion of the organic and the technical forged in particular historical cultural practices. Cyborgs are not about the machine and the human as if such things and subjects universally existed. Instead, cyborgs are about specific historical machines and people in interaction that often turns out to be painfully counterintuitive for the analyst of technoscience. The term cyborg was coined by Manfred Kleins and Nathan Klein to refer to the enhanced man who could survive in extraterrestrial environments. They imagined the cyborgian man-machine hybrid would be needed in the next great techno-humanist challenge, that is the space flight. A designer of physiological instrumentation and electronic data processing systems, Kleins was the chief research scientist in the dynamic simulation laboratory at Rockland State Hospital in New York. Okay. Klein that way was the director of research at Rockland State. Klein was a clinical psychiatrist, and the way they looked at this, one of their first cyborgs was a standard white laboratory rat implanted with an osmotic pump designed to inject chemicals continuously, exchanging knowing figures with their primate keen. Okay, rodents will reappear in this at every turn, beginning with the rats who stowed away on the mast ships of Europe's age of exploration. Rodents have gone first into the unexplored regions in the great travel narratives of Western technoscience. Many, I like in the science fictional wormhole in an episode in the television soap Deep Space Nine, the laboratory continues to suck us into uncharted regions of technical, cultural and political space. Passing through the wormhole of technoscience, the field mice emerge as the finely tailored laboratory rodents, model systems, animate tools, research material, self-acting organic technical hybrids. Okay? Through whose eyes Donna Haraway wrote essays on cyborg. Such modernist perspective on new meanings, modernist perspectives on new entities, modernist perspectives on new worlds. Okay. What Donna Haraway calls this field site the culture and practice of technoscience. Okay. Culture and practice of technoscience. While critical of many aspects of the way things happen, such as the wholesale extending of private property to patenting life forms, Haraway warns against any purist rejection of the unnatural hybrid entities produced by biotechnology. For example, the introduction of a gene from flounders into tomatoes which live in cold seas. It enables the tomato to produce a protein that slows freezing, right. Okay. A transgenic organism contains genes transplanted from one strain or species or even across taxonomic kingdoms. For example, from fish to tomatoes, or fireflies to tobacco, bacteria to humans, or vice versa, or to another. Transgenic border crossing signifies serious challenges to the sanctity of life for many members of Western cultures which historically have been obsessed with racial purity, okay, which is unscientific in fact, okay, which historically have been obsessed with which historically have been obsessed with racial purity, categories authorized by nature and the well defined self. The distinction between nature and culture in Western societies has been a sacred one. It has been at the heart of the great narratives of salvation history and their genetic transmutation into sagas of secular progress. What seems to be at stake in this culture's stories of the human place in nature, that is Genesis and its endless repetitions. And Western intellectuals, perhaps especially natural scientists and philosophers, have historically been particularly likely to take their cultural stories for universal realities. Often the kind of efforts to develop a politics of technology are seen as anti-technology, as an attempt to impose upon technology rigid negative political controls. The prevalence of that conception is sometimes misunderstood as an attack on science and technology. Okay? In this context, it is a mistake to forget that anxiety over the pollution of lineages is at the origin of racist discourse in European cultures as well as at the heart of linked gender and sexual anxiety. The discourses of transgression get all mixed up in the body of nature. Transgressive border crossing pollutes lineages. In a transgenic organism's case, the lineage of nature itself, transforming nature into its binary opposite, culture. The line between the acts, agents and products of divine creation and human engineering has given in the sacred secular border zones and of molecular genetics and biotechnology. The revolutionary continuities between natural kinds insaturated by the theory of biological evolution seem flaccid compared to the rigorous couplings across taxonomic kingdoms, not to mention nations and companies produced daily in the genetic laboratory. What appears here is that what is the cause and what is the effect? Like Haraway started with this, what is the cause and what is the effect? Gender or technology? Okay. Haraway tried to look at a dialectical relationship between gender and technology. Okay. And this dialectical relationship can be established in a more historical and material sense. Now, what is the cause and what is the effect? Nature or culture? One may say that even our culture is a part of nature. Somebody as a counter argument, somebody may say that no, the way we understand the relationship between nature and culture, it is culturally amplified, it is culturally conditioned. Okay? We must try to look at, we must try to examine the dialectical relationship between nature and culture. Okay? One just cannot say that no, culture is prior or nature is prior or something. It is the way we try to conceptualize nature or culture. Okay? They are very context specific. Okay? When Haraway pointed out that often efforts to develop a politics of technology are seen as anti-technology as an attempt to impose upon technology rigid, negative political controls. The prevalence of that misconception is sometimes misunderstood as an attack on science and technology. In this context, Whywhy is sharply critical of those who reject technology in favor of a return to a mythical natural state, and she argues instead for an embracing of the positive potential of science and technology. Okay? Here we are trying to bring about a critique to technology. Does not imply that we want to go back to the theological stage or metaphysical stage. When we started this course, we also started that there are 3 stages through which science has made progress. We have come to a point, there are 3 laws of stages in the development of society, namely theological stage or theological stage, secondly metaphysical stage, and thirdly positivistic or scientific stage. When we and theological stage is based on supernatural forces, I mean social change or the changes in economic, culture and polity are based on changes in supernatural phenomena. Okay? Whereas metaphysical stage suggests that no, this is only the changes which occur in economic, culture and polity, they are naturally mediated. Okay? And positivism or positivistic stage or scientific stage, they questioned even the existence of God, they questioned the existence of religion, they questioned theological stage, metaphysical stage and so on. Okay? I mean positivism also has to be looked at in the context of industrial revolution, critical thinking, reasoning capacity of the individuals as well as institutions. Okay. That is why when we try to bring about a critique to technology, we are not trying to go back to theological or metaphysical stage, but we are trying to understand how a particular technology is socially, economically and politically, culturally shaped, okay, by interrogating the hitherto existing forms and content of technology. Okay. In opposing the production of transgenic organisms, especially opposing their patenting and other forms of private commercial exploitation, committed activists appeal to notions such as the integrity of natural kinds and the natural teleology or self-defining purpose of all forms of life or all life forms. From this perspective, to mix and match genes as if organisms were legitimate raw material for redesign is to violate natural integrity at its vital core. Transferring genes between species transgresses natural barriers, compromising species integrity. The activists and others also emphasize many other arguments for opposition to various biotechnological practices in the New World Order. The objections include increasing capital concentration and the monopolization of the means of life, reproduction and labor, appropriation of the commons of biological inheritance as the private preserve of corporations, the global deepening of inequality by region, nation, race, gender and class, erosion of indigenous people's self-determination and sovereignty in regions designated as biodiverse, while indigenous lands and bodies become the object of intense gene prospecting and proprietary development, inadequately assessed and potentially dire environmental health consequences, misplaced priorities for technoscientific investment funds, propagation of distorted and simplistic scientific explanations such as genetic determinism, intensified cruelty to and domination of over animals, depletion of biodiversity and the undermining of established practices of human and non-human life, culture and production without engaging those most affected in democratic decision making. And they are valid, and these objections, these these interrogations are legitimate, they are valid. Okay? And one must take these objections very seriously. The state also must take these objections, interrogations very seriously. Okay? And all of them are taken up if but must be taken up very seriously. Okay? But what Haraway tried to point out, that Haraway does not think simply naming the concerns either decides the direction of effects or describes the cross-cultural polyphony through which scientific practice is constituted worldwide. Effects and practices are multi-layered and context specific, and it is too easy for all parties to fall into dogma where fundamental cultural and material values are both not shared and at stake. What must not be lost from sight in all of this complexity, however, is that power, profit and bodily arrangements are at the heart of biotechnology as a global practice. The stakes are immense, just as they are in nuclear culture. Okay? That is why, but by bringing about a rejection to the hitherto existing forms and content of technology in does not imply that one must go back to a mythical natural state, and perhaps for this reason Donna Haraway argues instead for an embracing of the positive potential of science and technology. For she revels in the very difficulty of predicting what technology's effects will be. Okay? The lively, unfixed and unfixing practices of science and technology produce surprises which just might be good ones. Haraway focuses on the Western theme of purity of type, natural purposes and transgression of sacred boundaries. The history and current politics of racial and immigration discourses in Europe and the United States ought to set off acute anxiety in the presence of these supposedly high ethical and ontological themes. Okay. If you slightly recall, what is ethics? Ethics is the study of nature of conduct. What is ontology? I mean, we discussed in the initial lectures the ontological questions. Ontology, what is being, what is existing. Okay? That is why in the appeal, I mean it is important to hear in the biotechnology debates the unintended tones of fear for the alien and suspicion of the mixed variety. In the appeal to intrinsic natures, Haraway tried to look at a mystification of kind and purity akin to the doctrines of white racial hegemony and US national integrity and purpose that to permeate North American culture and history. Haraway knew that this appeal to sustain other organisms' inviolable intrinsic natures is intended to affirm their difference from humanity and their claim on lives lived on their terms and not man's. The appeal aims to limit turning all the world into a source for human appropriation, but it is a problematic argument resting on unconvincing biology. History is erased for other organisms as well as for humans in the doctrine of types and intrinsic purposes, and a kind of timeless stasis in nature is piously narrated. If we look at this, then the ancient cobbled together mixed of history of living beings, okay, whose long tradition of genetic exchange will be the envy of industry for a long time to come, gets short-shrift more fundamentally in the midst of a nation where race is everywhere reproduced and reinforced, everywhere unspeakable and euphemized, okay, and everywhere deferred and treated obliquely, as in talk of drug wars, urban underclasses, diversity, illegal aliens, wilderness preservation, terrorist viruses, immune defenses against invaders and crack babies. I cannot hear discussion. I mean what Haraway tried to tried to interrogate, okay, that she was Haraway tried not to look at disharmonious crosses among or tried to avoid disharmonious crosses among organic beings and of implanted alien genes without hearing a racially inflected and xenophobic symphony. Located in the belly of the monster, Haraway found the discourses of natural harmony, the non-alien and purity unsalvageable for understanding our genealogy of the new world order. The way Haraway tried to look at this, the difficulty of predicting technology's effects, emotionally, intellectually, morally and politically to the natural and the pure. Perhaps for Haraway, it is perverse to hear the dangers of racism in the opposition of genetic engineering and especially transgenics at just the moment when national and international coalitions of indigenous, consumer, feminist, environmental and development non-governmental organizations, NGOs, civil society organizations have formed to oppose patenting, commercialization and expropriation of human, animal and plant genetic materials. Although the moral, scientific and economic issues are far from simple, Haraway opposed the patenting of animals, human genes and much plant genetic material. Okay? Haraway opposed patenting. It is important, okay, when we patent, what kind of things we are going to patent. If we are going to patent medicine, then it will be beyond the accessibility of many sections of the population in the world. If we patent seed, then our food system will be at stake. Okay? That is why Haraway, as a humanitarian, okay, she opposed patenting of animals, human genes and much plant genetic material. Genes for profit are not equal to science itself or to economic health. Genetic sciences and politics are at the heart of critical struggles for equality, democracy and sustainable life. The global commodification of genetic resources is a political and scientific emergency, and indigenous people are among the key actors in biopolitics, just as they have had to be in nuclear culture. But the actors in biopolitics, just as they have had to be, but the tendency by the Haraway in an interesting manner reflected on the political left, okay, her area of political spectrum, okay, to collapse molecular genetics, biotechnology, profit and exploitation into one undifferentiated mass is at least as much of a mistake as the mirror image reduction by the right of biological or informational complexity to the gene and its avatars or incarnations, including the dollar. Okay. Haraway's interesting reflection on this. Objects, many things can come up now. Totipotent stem cells, for example, are those cells in an organism that retain the capacity to differentiate into any kind of cell. Stem cells can regenerate the whole array of cell types possible for that life form. Stem cells are the nodes in which the potential of entire worlds is concentrated. Objects like the fetus, chip, computer, gene, race, ecosystem, brain, database and bomb are stem cells of the techno-scientific body. Okay? Each of these curious objects, maybe fetus, maybe chip, maybe gene, maybe computer, maybe ecosystem, race, brain, whatever, bomb, database, whatever you say, they are recent each of these curious objects is a recent construct or material semiotic object of knowledge forced by heterogeneous practices in the furnaces of technoscience. To be a construct does not mean to be unreal or made up. When we say technology is a constructed one, it does not imply that it is unreal or made up. In fact, it is quite the opposite. It is real, it is ontological. Okay? Out of each of these nodes or stem cells, sticky threads lead to every nook and cranny of the world. Which threads to follow is an analytical, imaginative, physical and political choice. Okay? Whywhy is committed to showing how each of these stem cells is a knot of KNOT, knot of knowledge making practices, industry and commerce, popular culture, social struggles, psychoanalytic formations, bodily histories, human and non-human actions, local and global flows, inherited narratives, news stories, syncretic, technical, cultural processes and many more. For example, a seed contains inside its coat the history of practices such as collecting, breeding, marketing, taxonomizing, patenting, biochemically analyzing, advertising, eating, cultivating, harvesting, celebrating and starving. Okay? I mean these are the functions of a seed. A seed produced in the biotechnological institutions now spread around the world contains the specifications for labor systems, planting calendars, pest control procedures, marketing, landholding and beliefs about hunger and well-being. Similarly, a database is a technical and utopic object that structures future accessibility. Why we create database? So that in future we can depend on them. Okay? A database is an ideal place where all elements are equal in the grid and everyone can access all of them. In the future also, the database is a condensed site for contestations over techno-scientific versions of democracy and freedom. This is very important. If democracy and freedom will be removed from the purview of the database, then the database loses its meaning. Both the genome and the brain are databases literally built in the experimental, multidisciplinary, documentary, proprietary, information management and other practices of the Human Genome Project and the Human Brain Mapping Project. What in a nutshell in the context of cyborgs, cyber organisms and so on, what Whywhy tried to examine? Let us sum up. Okay? Whywhy tried to work out at least some of the knots, again I repeat KNOTS. Okay? Whywhy attempted to work out at least some of the knots that constitute genes, databases, chips, computers, seeds, cyborgs, races, fetuses and so on, or bombs you may say. Okay? Her accounts are clearly not exhaustive as she has admitted, nor are they rigorously causal, but they are intended to be more than merely suggestive about the connective tissues, lubricants, codes and actors in the worlds we must care about. And such articulations about stem cells, and within each of them are links that matter in what gets affectionately called the real world. How do technoscientific stem cells link up with each other in expected and unexpected ways and differentiate into entire worlds and ways of life? It's fantastic, it's interesting to note this. Okay? How do technoscientific stem cells link up with each other in expected as well as unexpected ways and differentiate into entire worlds and ways of life? How do the differently situated human and non-human actors and actants encounter each other in interactions that materialize worlds in some forms rather than others. Whywhy's objective, Whywhy's purpose is to argue for a practice of situated knowledges in the worlds of technoscience. Situated knowledge that is why is context specific, science is context specific, to technology is context specific, that is what we have already discussed. Okay. The objective of Whywhy is to argue for a practice of situated knowledges, context specific knowledges, okay, in the worlds of technoscience, worlds whose fibers infiltrate deep and wide throughout the tissues of the planet, including the flesh of our personal bodies. Okay. Then what we have discussed till now in this lecture, we started with what is the relationship between gender and technology, okay? Whether technology is itself shaped by gender or gender is shaped by technology, feminist construal of technological systems. Then we discussed the relationship between ethnicity and technology. When we say the relationship between gender and technology, when Cockburn posed this question, is technology itself shaped by gender, she referred to industrial, commercial and military technologies which are masculine in a very historical and material sense. When Cockburn posed the second question, is gender shaped by technology, in this sense technology is one of the formative processes of men. The appropriation of technology by men and the exclusion of women from many of the domains deemed technical are processes that leave their mark in the very design of tasks and of machines. In ethnicity and technology, we have discussed how technology has been shaped by ethnicity, in that conventional valuations of skin colors have been the benchmark in the development of photographic and film technologies. Technology has helped constitute ethnicity, in that conventional hierarchies of desirability have been reinforced by the reproduction of white faces as pleasing flesh tones rather than unpleasantly beefy. From there on, we have come to a point of a cyborg or cybernetic organism as was envisaged by Donna J. Haraway. The cyborg is a figure in both material and fantastic sense, both real and imaginary sense, which explore the implications for life in the context of technoscience. Okay. Haraway always used the term technoscience because for her and for STS scholars mostly science and technology are inseparable. That is why she did not use the term science and technology separately, she used the term technoscience. The liberatory potential of science and technology involves the greater power of science and technology to create new meanings, new entities and to make new worlds. This is a modernist perspective on new meanings and modernist perspective on new entities, new modernist perspectives on new worlds. While critical of many aspects of the way things happen, such as the wholesale extending of private property to patenting life forms, Haraway warns against the purist rejection of the unnatural hybrid entities produced by biotechnology, although she was very much opposed to patenting of animals, human genes and much plant genetic material. For example, the introduction of a gene from flounders into tomatoes which live in cold seas, which enables the tomato to produce a protein that slows freezing. From there on, Haraway goes on to reflect on how often efforts to develop a politics of technology are seen as anti-technology, as an attempt to impose upon technology rigid, negative political controls. The prevalence of that misconception is sometimes misunderstood as an attack on science and technology. Okay. Haraway is sharply critical of those who reject technology in favor of a return to a mythical natural state or theological stage or metaphysical stage. Rather, she argues instead for an embracing of the positive potential of science and technology. Whywhy revels in the very difficulty of predicting what technology's effects will be. In this sense, she reflects on the lively, unfixed and unfixing practices of science and technology that produces surprises which produce the lively, unfixed and unfixing practices of science and technology which produce surprises which just might be good ones. Okay? And the purpose, Whywhy's purpose is to argue for a practice of situated knowledges in the worlds of technoscience, worlds which fibers infiltrate deep and wide throughout the tissues of the planet, including the flesh of our personal bodies. Okay? In the next lecture, what we are going to do, we are going to discuss, in the next lecture we will wind up two components, especially two components to establish further the social shaping of technology. One was the excerpts from Marx's writings, okay, the machine versus the worker, and technology and capitalist control by Harry Braverman, and then we will come to a gendered socio-technical construction in the context of a smart house case, the smart house prototypes, and what do designers have in mind when we go out with construction, when we go out with a design. Okay? Housework, out of sight, out of mind, women as a social group relevant, women and many other marginalized communities, indigenous communities, they are significant, they are relevant social groups, but they are mostly neglected, removed while construing a particular technology. That is why we will discuss how smart house is a masculine construct, the decline of the one size fits all paradigm, a history of contraceptive technologies, the institutionalization of women as the other, shift in focus from similarities to differences, the institutionalization of women as the other, and then we will discuss development of the first physiological means of contraception focused exclusively on women, one size fits all, and its counter arguments to such notion of one size fits all, and how to, whether we should modify technology to fit people or we should modify people to fit technology, that is a different thing. Before we go into our discussion, go into discussing discussing the information society issues and illusions by David Lyon. Okay? Thank you.